Hi, I'm Pam East, and today I'm going to show you how to enamel in the Ultralite kiln. The Ultralite is a fraction the price of a full-size kiln, and you can do a lot of really fun enameling projects. Let's get to it. Let's set up the Ultralite for enameling. The first thing you're going to want to do is place a sheet of mica, and you can buy these already cut to fit, on the element, and that's going to protect the element in case any enamel spills. Then we're going to put the lid on, then we're going to set this heat-safe mat, make sure there's no dust on this, on a tile, and we're going to set the Ultralite on that. And that's going to keep your work surfaces safe from the heat. And then remember, we need this lid to be highly reflective, and that is so that we're getting the full heat inside the unit, and it's not reduced because it's not getting the reflection it needs. There's also, and you need to think about how you're positioning the lid. If I pull this lid back, I'll get more airflow inside of the unit, and I won't get as high a temperature. If I push this forward, I still want the back of the opening covered, but if I push it really far forward, I have a less of an opening here, I get less airflow, I get a higher heat inside the unit. And that's what I want for enameling. That's going to give me the best results. All right, so then we're just going to plug this in, heat it up for 45 minutes. You got to do that preheat for 45 minutes, and then we'll be ready to enamel. All right, these have been cleaned and we're ready to apply the enamels. I'm going to start by applying the clear enamel, which is going to help lay in the enamel and get it to lay down right. And I'm going to start with the darker color at the bottom. And now this should pick up really easy, that your brush should penetrate the bristles. If it doesn't pick up easy, if your brush won't penetrate, it's too dry and you need to add a little more water. And just use your pipette and the distilled water to wet it a little more. If when you're laying it down, it doesn't lay down neatly like this, it's too dry. So it should just lay right in without any problem. And now I'm going to switch to the lighter color. And I like to use more than one color. You could use just one color. You could use 3 colors. I probably wouldn't do more than 3. It gets hard to blend on something this small. Now it's a very small area, and I'm just doing 1 or 2 thin layers of enamel, so I don't need counter enamel. And that's why it's just sitting on the surface like this, is I don't need to do any counter enamel. I'm going to use the needle tool to pull some of that enamel up into that point. It's kind of hard to get it into the point with just the brush. So I'm going to use the needle to do that. Now, this is an ultra clay pick, but it's one I only use for enameling. I don't go back and forth cutting metal clay and doing enameling because I run the risk of getting metal clay contamination into my enamel. So make sure that you have one that's set aside specifically for enamel. I'm going to blend the grains where they come together. I don't want there to be a sharply defined line, so I'm doing a little blending here. And the light one looks a little thin to me, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Yeah, that looks better. And again, I'm going to bring it up into that point. And then I need to settle the enamel. So if I just dry it and fire it, it could be lumpy, and I want the enamel to be flat. So I'm going to pick this up, and I'm going to tap the edge with my clay pick. A brush won't work, it's too light. You need something that will jar the enamel. And it's settling the enamel in the space. It's going down into all the little crevices. And now I'm going to wick away the excess moisture. I'm just using a piece of paper towel. Toilet paper works really well. That's actually my favorite. It's very absorbent. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to make sure that there are no grains of enamel out on the frame, because that's just going to make finishing work for me later if I have to grind that off. So make sure you clean up the frame and that there's no enamel on there. I'm just pushing it into the design. All right, so that's ready to fire. I'm going to go ahead and apply enamel on the second one, and then I'll fire both of them at the same time. All right, we're ready to fire these, and I found that the spatula is the easiest way to get these in there. And I'm going to be firing directly on the mica, so it is going to go fairly quickly. You don't need quite as much heat in here because you are almost directly on the element. So I'll just slide that one in. And then I'm going to slide this one in. And then I'm going to put that lid on. And this is only going to take a minute or two. So I'm going to be peeking periodically to see how it's doing. And I'll just take a little look. And they're already fusing. Right now, one of them, the first one I put in is already at the orange peel stage. I don't want to take that off too much because then I'll lose too much heat. I'm going to push this forward a little bit so that I get a slightly higher heat in there. All right, and these are done. They are fired. So now I'm going to use the tweezers to help get them back onto the spatula. I've found, I mean, sometimes you can pick them up with the tweezers, and you're welcome to try that, but have the spatula ready in case you drop it like that. So there they are. And the color is going to change as they cool. They don't come out exactly the color they're going to be. You don't know until they're completely cooled. Counter enamel on this piece, I have to put it on a trivet. And I've got a new trivet here specifically for the Ultralite. Because there are heat issues with this one, it doesn't heat the same as a traditional kiln, I needed a lighter weight metal and a lower profile to fit in there. This is only for the Ultralite. I don't recommend using it in a traditional kiln. Just use the regular trivets for that. To open it up, it's the same as my other ones. I'm going to put this on the fold side down by the V, and I'm just going to pull these fins open. And there is the trivet. It works with my spatula just like the old ones. And now I can use that to support my piece when I'm doing counter enameling. We're going to be counter enameling this piece. We'll start by applying clear fire to the back. Now you want to do enamel on the front and the back when it's a larger area because it's more prone to cracking. Also you want to do it if it's a thicker enamel. This will still be a thin enamel, but it's broad enough that I want to do the counter enamel. You'll notice I'm wearing a glove on this hand because I don't want to be getting oily fingerprints onto this surface I've already cleaned and prepared with the pre-enamel. This is the enamel adhesive. It comes concentrated and it's called Clear Fire. And I've diluted it 50-50 with distilled water in a mister, in a sprayer. I'm going to get this ready. I'm going to be using the 8150 mesh enamel. Since this is not going over a texture, I don't need the finer 150-325. Counter enamel is a great use of your 8150, and I just choose a color that I'm going to be using on the front, or you could also use clear. I'm going to put some of this into the sifter, and you don't want to fill this more than about a third full or it won't sift out very well. Notice I'm working over a piece of paper, and never set your trivet on this piece of paper. Once you start using this, it's going to get dark and it might get fire scale on it, and you don't want to get fire scale in your enamel, so keep that off of your paper. You want to be on a clean sheet of paper. When I spray this, normally I would not spray over my work surface, but I want you to see how I'm going to spray it. I'm going to hold it some distance away because if I'm too close, I'm going to get great big beads of this clear fire on there. So I want to be about 12 inches away, and I'm just doing a light mist, just like that. Now I can sift over this, and I'm going to hold it at an angle so that I'm really getting those edges. Do the edges first before worrying about the middle. It's very easy to get it mounded up in the middle and not have it at the edges, and that's why I start with the edges. And I just want a nice even coat. I'm running my fingernail over this handle, and that is vibrating the tool and making the material sift out. So there it is. And now I want to put it in the trivet. So I'm going to lay it on here, and that's ready to fire. So before I fire this, I want to clear, there's all this stray enamel that ended up on the back of the bale, and there's no enamel on the other side of the bale. So by cleaning that off, it's going to make the back look a little neater. Get it out of here too. You can see if there's any along the edges. This is just saving you some cleanup work later. All right, so now that's ready to fire. You may notice that my spatula seems short. This does have a long handle that screws together. This is a foldable spatula. And when I'm working in a regular kiln, I need a long handle. But when I'm working in the Ultralite, I don't have to put that extension on. This is long enough. I'm just going to pick this up, and in we go. And now remember to position the lid towards the opening so that there's not as much air circulation, and we're going to keep as much heat as possible inside the Ultralite. And just like when we were firing directly on the mica, we're going to just keep an eye on it to know when it's done. It's going to take a little longer because it's up above the element instead of sitting directly on the element. Okay, this is done. It's a little bit at the orange peel stage, but that's okay because when I enamel the front, that will continue to fuse and it'll smooth out. Now I'm going to turn it over. Once it's cooled, I'm going to turn it over and enamel the front. So let's go ahead and apply the enamel to the front. And I'm going to start with the clear enamel, just like I did before, to make the enamel lay in well. And I'm going to start with the darker color, which is, in this case, water blue. And as I said, it should just be laying down very neatly. If it's not laying down neatly, it's a little too dry. And I actually think that this is a little too dry. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add just a couple drops of water. And that's going to make it lay down better. There we go. Notice that I'm dipping my brush in the clear enamel from time to time. And that puts just enough of that into the material to release any bubbles. I'm going to kind of go around the outside edge and then do the lighter shade in the middle. All right, so let me switch to the aqua. Now, earlier I was telling you never to work over the trivet, but that's only when you're sifting and you want to be able to collect the oversift and put it back in your enamels. As long as I'm wet packing, working on the trivet is just fine. This is wet packing. It was doing the counter enamel, was being done dry. All right, so then I want to do that blending technique where I'm going to come in and make sure that the grains of enamel are blended where they come together so that I don't get any sharp line between the two colors. I just want it to be a nice gradual shading. Now this is looking a little thin. I think I might want to go a little thicker on the enamel. I'd love to be able to get this in one coat. On something this big, sometimes I have to do 2 coats. So let me go ahead and add just a little more. That's looking better. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. And now I'm going to tap the edge to flatten the enamel. And then I've got the toilet paper, which is really absorbent, is going to pull off all that excess water. And then I want to go over it and try and get as much off the edges as I can, because the more enamel that is up on the frame, the more work I have to do on this after it's fired. I already got a little bit on the edges, but at this point it's pretty easy to get off because it's at the outside edges. It's much harder to get off when it's next to the enamel itself. So like this enamel I got out here, that's going to be easy to clean up. But where it comes up right to the frame, that's hard to get cleaned off without scratching your enamel. I am adding a little moisture as I do this to be able to get it to go where I want it to go, so I may have to tap and wick it again. There we go. All right. So I'm going to let that dry for just a minute. If there's too much water in the enamel, when you put it into the kiln, the water can boil and blow bubbles into your piece. So you want it to dry just a little bit, maybe 5 minutes. All right, we're ready to go in. And off she goes. Now remember to move the lid towards the front so that you get a little hotter in there. And we'll just keep an eye on it. It'll take about the same time as the back did. All right, this is done. Let's go ahead and pull it out. Now, that took about 2 minutes. It may vary depending upon the thickness of the metal and how thickly you applied the enamel. So that's just an average. But you'll notice it's a very green color. It's going to turn blue as it cools, and then I'll show you how to get the enamel off those edges. All right, so if you did a great job and didn't get any enamel out on this rim, you could just do a little light sanding on that and then finish it off in the tumbler. And this is what I'm going to do for most of these, is I'm just going to tumble them. But if you got enamel on this edge, you definitely want to get that off. Then tumbling isn't going to take it off, sanding isn't going to take it off. You have to grind it off. So all grinding and sanding on enamel is done wet. And so I'm going to get it wet in this bowl of water. And this is a diamond file, and it is 200 grit. And I'm going to get it wet, the piece is wet, and I'm going to gently take off the enamel. Now, I'm out at the edge on here. Keep this off the enamel. I do not want to scratch the enamel. Now, if you accidentally scratch your enamel, clean the enamel with a glass brush and ammonia and refire it to fuse it again. But ideally, do not scratch your enamel. And I'm not doing a lot of work here. It was just very little, just enough to get the glass off, That's all I'm trying to do, is get the enamel off of the surface. And as soon as I'm done with that, then I'm going to do a little sanding to get rid of the roughness from the grinding. And let me make sure there's none on the edges. A little there. The other thing to look for is trivet marks, to see if you got a sharp trivet mark on the back, and you can sand that off as well if you have that, or grind that off. This is, I would refer to this as a grinding tool. All right, so, and it came out really good. All right, so I've got a little bit more right down here. Again, I'm trying not to get on the enamel. That's why I like this little narrow one, because it's much easier to control. And do I have any more? I think I have a little over here. All right, once I have all the enamel off, then I'm going to sand it. This leaves really deep grooves in the silver, and tumbling isn't going to get rid of that. So I need to smooth it out at least a little bit. And I have some of these 3M sanding pads. I'm starting with the superfine, which is not the finest. And I'm going to also dip that in water. And you'll see pretty quickly that you're able to get the deep marks out. Okay, so the minute I started doing that, I saw a little more enamel. This is not going to get the enamel off. So I have to go back. Watching me do this should make you hyper vigilant on getting that enamel off before you fire it. Save yourself this effort. And if you find that you're not getting the marks from the grinding tool out with the superfine, then back up to the medium. This is the one up from the medium. But it seems to be doing a good job. And then I'm going to try the microfine here. Just try and get all those little scratches out. Use whatever sanding tools you need. You could also be using just regular wet dry sandpaper would work. You know, start with a 220 grit and then go to a 320 and then go to a 400. That would also work. And once you get it so that you're not seeing obvious scratches, then just go ahead and finish it off in the tumbler. The tumbler will not hurt the enamel. And that's a very easy, quick and easy way to finish these off. If you want the super high polish, you can certainly hand finish them. But again, like I said before, avoid scratching the enamel.